What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Nolecast, coming to you on this fine Thursday, watching the U.S. Open. Of course, Kepke just tapping in for a nice little birdie there, and pretty hot Saturday here in Florida, where everybody, presumably listening to this, is. Although we certainly have folks abroad. Got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of folks writing in on Patreon, Twitter messages, etc. And there's actually some stuff going on with FSU now, so that's it's kind of nice to be able to chat about. Unfortunately, one of the things that ended, although it was a heck of a season and a run that I think Knowles fans can be proud of, is the baseball season. We don't talk a lot of college baseball here on the Nolecast during a regular season because, quite frankly, it just doesn't do good numbers. People don't really seem to care enough about regular season college baseball, or rather, let me say, not enough people care enough about regular season college baseball to do real numbers. Obviously, there's the animals. There's some real dedicated FSU college baseball fans out there, but you talk a lot of college baseball on your FSU podcast. It's not going to do much. So, got to keep the sponsors happy, obviously, by having good numbers. So, with that said, we do talk a little more college baseball when it comes time. The big series, obviously, your better conference series, Miami, Florida, the ACC tournament, and then obviously the road to Omaha. And so with that, I think that's a season you can be pretty proud of. The Noles do drop 2 out of 3 out there at Oregon State. They were the 8 seed. You were the 9 seed, so you had to go there as opposed to them coming to you, which kind of stinks. Kind of a wonky field, by the way. Like, I was like, man, that ball in the outfield is just skipping. It's all turf field, which I get because of how much rain they get out there. It just makes a lot of sense. There's not a whole lot of natural grass stuff going on out there, especially not if you play a sport that is in more of the rainy season. But Oregon State was a good baseball team. You were a good baseball team. Look, I think there's a lot to be pretty happy about. Like the way Miles played and developed later on in the season, that was really, really cool to see. Sorry, if you're watching on YouTube there, you saw me mute in time for a sneeze. But if you're on audio, you might be like, where did Bud go? Well, I had a sneeze. Anyway, but damn, that does hurt. Like just sitting there, I'm watching that. I'm talking to my buddy, and we're going over it. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. You're up 4-1 in the ninth, and like I know you have not had a great bullpen all year. It'd be nice if FSU could have a better bullpen, but just some of the way this went down to walk the pinch hitter, whose run is really quite meaningless. And he's hitting 210 on the season. Walking him and not just even throw him a cookie. The chance he actually hits it out is fairly low. Not zero, certainly, right? But pretty low. Just let him put the bat on the ball and take your chances. To walk him, I think really kind of set everything in motion that you might have some trouble. I didn't think they were going to have that much trouble, but still, that stunk. And yet also you can kind of look back a couple times and say, well, okay, if you don't run the bases like jerks, you probably have more than 4 runs in that ball game, but you did run yourself into some outs, and it wasn't always just being over aggressive. Sometimes it was just being kind of silly and just not maybe the level of championship focus that I think you'd want in a super regional game. But nonetheless, like to lose everything this team lost off last year and to come back and have this kind of season, it was cool to see Jamie Arnold throw pretty well, not early in the outing, but obviously throw pretty well in his final outing there at Florida State. That was fun. I was like, this is cool. This is a fun baseball team to watch. That they do play with a lot of passion, and I think Link Jarrett really has something going on. I mean, obviously he's made super regionals like 4 of the last 5 years. That's pretty awesome. I think that baseball is something FSU should probably continue to invest in. It's something the fans are really passionate about. I think you have a much better chance, and we'll get to this in the later part of this show, but I think you got a much better chance of competing long-term in baseball at a high-ish level than you do in basketball. Just my opinion with how some of the things shape out. But let's go ahead and pivot here, and let's talk to our friends at Legendary Home Loans. Legendary Home Loans, 844-FSU or Ledger 844 FSU Loan, 844 FSU Loan, the legendary team does a great job. Chad crushed it again. I just had another loan recently through him. So exciting stuff there. Awesome throughout the entire process. Works for you fast. Like really wants you to get the loan at a good rate. Keeps you informed the entire time. His entire team, Jessica, Howard, all of them were great to work with, and just could not have been a better process. I already knew that because I've already used them twice, and obviously we have 600 Nolecast listeners who have as well. But it's always nice to affirm it. So yes, they stay stamped in my book as an awesome outfit to use for any kind of home loan need that you might have, and they have great programs going on right now. So 844 FSU Loan. A lot of people, including my mom, actually, shout out mom. She wanted to know the impact of Zach Arnett coming on as an analyst for the Noles. And I said, it doesn't hurt, right? He is somebody who is off that 3-3-5 tree of defense. Zach Arnett, if you don't know, was the former defensive coordinator for Mississippi State. And then after Mike Leach's tragic passing, he got elevated to the interim coach. And look, that was an awful situation. He was like totally unqualified to be an SEC head coach at the time that he got elevated. But I think sometimes when you're making these interim decisions, you're like, hey, we got to go with somebody who's already here to keep the team together. It's a tragedy. Totally understood why they did it. And it was a total failure, right? But not unexpected. Like, I think most people looked at that and said, that's a super hard job. Mike Leach is a really unique coach and a really special coach who can take programs with a total lack of resources relative to their peers in the conference and still put together a solid product on the field. Now, he ends up getting fired, obviously, and then goes to UNLV, where he left for, I think it was like unspecified personal reasons. I don't really know exactly what was behind that. I mean, that always has like a negative connotation behind it, but I don't really know exactly what it was. So I'm not going to speculate. I think there's a couple things Zach Arnett does really well. His pressure packages are pretty cool. And by that, I mean, like, some guys are really good offensively at figuring out how to bust coverages. They're good at figuring out your tells as to what coverage you're in, your checks, your reactions to certain motions, formations, shifts, tendencies, etc. And then they're able to kind of create those one-on-none opportunities. I'm talking about offensive coordinators here. I think certain defensive guys are really good at figuring out what your protections are, and like based on, again, formation, motion, tendencies, right? Alignment, shifting, all that kind of stuff. Down distance, etc. Maybe some signals, whatever. I think some of these defensive guys are very good at figuring out your protections and then finding a way to bust those protections to create, again, that one-on-none instant pressure situation. Does that mean that Florida State will have amazing pass rush this year or amazing blitz stuff? No, certainly not. Well, not certainly not, but that certainly does not guarantee that they will. But I don't think it can hurt. I mean, Tony White's a 3-3-5 guy. Zach Arnett is off roughly the same tree, or at least the same style of defense. He's a lot more aggressive than Tony White is, but maybe that complements it well. Maybe Tony White more of a coverage guy, Zach Arnett more of a pressure guy. Maybe Tony gets to pick Zach's brain about how do we dial up certain pressures against this scheme or that scheme. Personally, I think that's a great opportunity for him to do so. And I think if you're Mike Norvell, probably a savvy move, right? I don't really know what the true downsides of this are. It's pretty clear that Tony White runs the defense. It's not like there's going to be a whole lot of infighting with a guy who is merely an analyst. And you could say SEC experience or whatever. I don't really care about that. Like, I think ball is kind of ball when it comes to scheming it up, but certainly somebody who I think is a welcome addition to the staff and might be able to help you with some of your pressure stuff. Does it change your season all that much? I doubt it. Could it help a little bit? Sure. So overall, I think that's a pretty good take by the Noles right there. And, I think pass rush just overall is a major concern I have with this football team, right? Given some of the injuries that you suffered in spring with some of your transfers, especially some that, could be like long term. That's kind of scary right there. I think you lack quality depth as far as pass rushers right now. You've recruited the position terribly. So by FSU standards, obviously, like I think it's still important that we hold this program to a Florida State level standard. But you've recruited it pretty poorly under Mike Norvell's tenure, and so having to scheme up some pressure certainly could be something that could affect and really benefit this team this season. All right, next up, something that people were kind of mad about, which I think you can kind of lump me in with this as well, is College Game Day electing to go to Columbus for the Week 1 game where Texas travels to Ohio State as opposed to Tallahassee. Now, you might say, if you were not a Noles fan and you were not pretty diehard into the situation, you'd be like, dude, Bama was kind of down last year. They didn't make the playoff, and Florida State really sucked last year. They went 2-10. Texas made the final four, and Ohio State won the Natty. So it's a pretty clear slam dunk where ESPN's going to go. But there are some factors here that I think would have justified Game Day going to Tallahassee. Chief among them is that this is Lee Corso's last game. Lee Corso, of course, Burt Reynolds' roommate, former teammate at Florida State, Sunshine School. I mean, come on, man. Like, that would be a cool send-off for Coach Corso to be able to have his last College Game Day appearance be in Tallahassee. But they didn't do that. And the other reason why I think maybe you could have told yourself that it was going to happen was that this is a noon game on Big Noon, which is the Fox property. And ESPN, they can't say this, and I'm not saying this is always a rule, but I can pretty much guarantee you it's a preference that they choose a different game other than the Big Noon kickoff game, because that means Big Noon is going to be there. That's the Fox pregame show that has been put in place and has done really well for Fox, actually. Like, Fox is crushing it with this Big Noon thing. As much as Big Ten fans hate this, I often say take the checks, take the losses to some of these fan bases who join these mega conferences and start losing all these games, because it's a lot harder. But it's kind of like take the checks, take the consequences here. Like, you signed up to play with a Fox contract, and Fox was very clear they love taking advantage of this noon spot. The noon spot does absolutely insane ratings for them, but it does suck, man. Like, if you could have been a little bit better last year, like if you just made a bowl game, maybe not go 2-10, made a bowl game, do some of the transfer stuff you got going, new coordinators, maybe. But I guess there are so many storylines for Texas Ohio State. You have Jeremiah Smith, you have Caleb Downs. I mean, almost certainly the sport's best defensive player in Downs, and I think unquestionably entering the season, the sport's best offensive player in Jeremiah. And you also have on the other side Arch Manning, so double former 5-star quarterback intrigue with Manning for Texas, who's a freaking Manning. So that's going to do insane numbers for your storylines. And then also, of course, Julian Sayin, who was a 5-star who chose Ohio State. I get it, but it does still suck. And I think you're like, you can be mad at ESPN and also kind of mad at FSU's program for going 2-10, for showing a lot of quit last year, for not being able to thread the needle in terms of bringing in more talent, but also guys who were ready to play right away. And that stinks. Like, there's no real other way to put that. So I don't know. Like, maybe they'll do something for Coach Corso. I would assume they would. Nobody's told me that, but I also didn't ask in the last couple of days about whether FSU was going to do some kind of tribute to him. If they do it, I would hope, and I saw this a lot on Facebook, I would hope that it's like for a decent game, so you don't have like a half empty stadium for Kent State or East Texas A&M Technical College or whatever, because that's not a great look there for Corso. So, and I think if you do it on a bigger game, that would be a cool thing. It would get more play on social as well and across the country. And I think a lot of people probably would sincerely come and want to say thank you to Coach Corso for all that he did for the sport of college football. I mean, the guy's an awesome figure. The passion for this sport, just, I mean, you feel it through the TV, even at his advanced age. And the other thing on this, I do not think that FSU fans' vitriol towards Herb Street and those guys had a real impact in this decision. Now, nobody's told me that, but this feels very businessy to me. Like, it's just business. And who knows? Maybe Corso told him, hey, like, don't go to the crappier game on account of me. Like, go to the best game that we can go to that has the best storylines, that makes for the best broadcast. And if he did, that's probably just pretty consistent with what Lee Corso wanted throughout his career. So just to make the best possible college football pregame show that they could, week in and week out. So I get it. I do hope they do something nice for Corso coming up. Do want to thank our sponsors at Congruity, congruityhr.com. I think 8 or 9 Nole-owned businesses have used Congruity, whether you need payroll, HR solutions, health insurance solutions. Congruity can help you optimize your business. Congruity at congruityhr.com, a proud sponsor of the Nolecast now for many years. So with that, let's talk about a fairly complex matter coming up that I wish we had Graham on today, and I think next week he and I will actually collab on one here. We were both traveling. So the House settlement has been approved and is going to go into effect. Let's take this from the FSU perspective. So revenue sharing will go into effect. This does not eliminate NIL. So like you're going to have, roughly 20 million for rev share. A large portion of that is going to go to football. It does not eliminate NIL. You will still have NIL deals. NIL deals will now be reviewed by a bit of a clearinghouse if they are over $600. It'll be interesting to see all the potential implications of this, like how badly do they get sued for limiting how much somebody can make in America, which is supposed to be a free country, without limits on how much you can make. But if this all like truly goes to form, I do think it really helps FSU because there are some schools that just have way more money than the Noles have, right? I mean, you saw like Michigan has Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, and Texas Tech has a guy in Cody Campbell who has like 55 billion or something like that, or whatever the number was. Just something insane to where funding a large portion of a $55 million payroll for all sports for NIL is just not that painful, I guess, even if you are a Texas Tech guy. You saw Texas Tech pay $1 million for the softball pitcher from Stanford, which, I mean, hey, it would take me a hell of a lot of money to leave Stanford for Texas Tech, I can tell you that. But $1 million if I played softball, and there's no like pro softball out there that you can make real, like, I don't say real money, but like big time money in. So I get it. So if this all goes to form, if NIL deals are actually truly regulated now, or regulated like more seriously, that it's more market value or consistent with services rendered and market sensitive, etc. This could help FSU. I think I have some more questions about this though. One, I think this is going to set up a situation where teams are like participants in a lot of sports. Like they nominally maintain a team in a lot of sports. But in which sports do they really try to excel? Like Florida State, they have quite a few sports that they actually do well in. I don't think in a revenue sharing era that it's possible to be good, like really good, in a lot of different sports if you are a school that has football and cares about football. If you are one of these schools like St. John's or something like that doesn't have football, they're just basketball first type thing, then maybe. But still, you're probably throwing a football size number at basketball in that case. And by this, I mean, I think it's almost impossible to be legitimately good in football, basketball, and baseball at the same time if you're Florida State. And you also have a few other sports that are pretty damn good. Obviously, golf is quite good. Women's soccer is quite good. And a number of the other sports, FSU track traditionally is pretty solid. So you're going to have to make some choices. Like, which sports do you really believe that you can compete in and win something, and have that be one of the flagships of your school? And which sports do you merely want to field the team because you have to field a certain number of teams, and it's just you already have them, so you don't really want to eliminate them. That's going to create some situations, though, certainly with, and it's going to happen in every school. This is not an FSU specific thing, but I'm just using FSU as the example. This is an FSU show. That's going to create some like infighting type situations among coaches for sure. Like maybe the tennis coach gets mad because the soccer coach is getting more for his or her team or whatever, right? I could certainly see, like, do you have to make a choice now between basketball and baseball? Right? I think it's easier. I said this at the beginning of the show. I think it's much easier to be good at baseball than it is at basketball because there are so many northern teams who really don't have the option to be good at baseball because of the weather, and also so many teams up north who don't have a baseball team at all, so they're just pouring more money in to the basketball. So, like, the basketball market is really expensive, and I know a lot of people like basketball. Not nearly as many people like football. Obviously, football is the king. But when I look at this, I am curious as to how well you can do at all the sports. So which sports will FSU choose to excel in, or at least choose to put their money behind? And which sports will FSU like simply maintain? And that's not an FSU specific thing. Again, I don't think any school, unless you just have crazy mega donors for every sport or something like that, I don't think there are many schools that are really set up to have that happen. It's also going to create some interesting situations that we need some answers to. For instance, can you save your rev share money from 1 year and apply it to the next year? Is there a rule that says you have to spend it in that given year? Can you borrow against future years' rev share and spend that and then obviously like back off the following year? If you're one of these schools that has a GM that has like, authority over the head coach, right? Because you don't really have owners in college sports. Typically the owner would fire the GM or the head coach, or maybe the GM, fires the head coach type thing. But in this case, I guess the AD would sort of be the owner, but like the owner never gets fired in the NFL or in college sports, but the AD certainly does in college. And you look at this, I wonder, would you tank? Should you tank? Like if you're like, man, this is going nowhere, right? And we're not going to sell any tickets. Like this season just stinks. We're not just going to throw a bunch of money at this problem to go 8-4 instead of 6-6, because nobody's really going to think 8-4 is like a true, oh yeah, we're really close. Like the fans aren't total idiots. Well, most of them. I don't know. Like, is that allowed? If it is, should you do that, or do you? Is it kind of a use it or lose it type situation where you have to spend your rev share money in that given calendar year or in that given 2-semester academic year, or you risk losing it? I don't know. I've also seen things that schools are like held accountable if their athletes don't report some of their NIL deals. I mean, good luck getting these kids to report their NIL deals. I don't really know what mechanism they have to truly enforce that. I can certainly understand that, I mean, like you could threaten eligibility, you could threaten stuff like that, but that's not super easy. I am like very, very curious to see what will happen there. There are so many questions, but this is yet another reason why with the rev share thing, you need to get out of the ACC. You need to be able to get to the SEC and the Big Ten, because in the future that rev share money, could become quite a bit bigger, even if right now it's fairly even. What else do I have on this? Yeah, I think you have to start making harder roster choices as well. Like, do you focus on just like the top 30 or so guys? Do you want to have a deeper roster? Eventually, we are going to the 105. That's 105 roster cap. All of them on scholarship, no more walk-ons. We have the grandfathered kids in right now. If you were in under the old structure, you're allowed to complete your eligibility. So we're not going to get to 105, quite yet. But man, I think there are a lot of really, really fun scenarios here, and I do wonder if this will bring more parity to the sport, which is good and bad. Typically, like things that bring more parity to the sport are bad for FSU, but in this case, I think there are some teams that do have a huge financial advantage on the Noles right now. Not like a bunch, 7, 8, maybe 10 of them. And maybe that helps you narrow the gap with them some. But maybe there can be a Big 12 team or something that comes up and it's like, hey, We've been stacking our cash for a couple years. Now we're all in. Like now we're going to spend. We saw that last year a little bit, right? There were some teams. Shoot, who was that? There was a team that, Auburn, right? Like Auburn was sitting on its cash somewhat in recruiting, especially in the transfer portal stuff. And then this offseason, they had a bunch, and like the best quarterbacks available were John Mateer, who went to Oklahoma with his offensive coordinator, and Carson Beck, who went to Miami, and he's coming off of an elbow tear. So you're kind of at the mercy of the market in some ways. But I do think it's going to force some hard choices about which sports you want to really sustain. And I think the smart teams are going to be able to use strategy here quite a bit. I think it opens up the possibility that you have. I think it's going to be far harder to sustain like excellence year over year over year for all programs, really, which probably is good for the health of the sport, because you could have programs that rise up and have a really special year, and those fans of those programs hold on to that kind of stuff. Certainly, every time you go 2-10, that special year that you just had in 2023, you hold on to that one a little bit more, right? All right. Do you want to tell you about our sponsor, Madison Social, and obviously the For the Table Restaurant Group, the family of restaurants? Fantastic people to work with. Matt Thompson has been great to us for a long time. Madso is the absolute spot. If you're up there for FSU camps, you got to stop in. You got to go ahead and get a burger, BLT dip, whatever else. Township, all their other great concepts are fantastic. And I mean, they just don't miss. Like really, those guys crush it with all their restaurant concepts. I wish that we had that when I was in Tally. Like we had some good restaurants back then, but it was pretty hit or miss. If you went to college, when I did in the aughts, it was a little sketch at times. And Matt's group has just come in and done such an awesome job there, revitalizing the area that we now know as College Town. So, what's going on with quarterback recruiting? No 2026 commit yet. The big news that I believe Zach Blostein reported was that Keyshawn Henderson, was an awesome quarterback prospect for this system, was coming on a visit last week, and he's committed to Houston. He's all in on Houston. It was a surprise that he was taking the visit really anywhere, because a lot of schools have tried to get him to visit, and he shut that down. He's a kid who originally was ranked as like the number one athlete in the country type player, and then his designation was switched from athlete to quarterback as he showed those quarterback skills continuing to improve. But athletically, that dude is a freak. And I mean, the fit that he would have made, and I said would have because he canceled his visit, the fit that he would have made in Gus Malzahn's offense, which you're running a running quarterback scheme now, would have been, I think, just fantastic. I have said on this show before that I think if I was running FSU's like general manager type spot with this offense, I would kind of punt quarterback. I would go for a lower priced runner for the most part, because the passing concepts in this offense just aren't anything special, right? They're not. I don't think you need a special passer to have a successful season here in this offense. You went and got it for a reason. It's a floor raising offense. I don't think it's much of a ceiling raising offense. But if you're Mike Gravel, your goal is to not get fired. Like you might say your goal is to win the national title long term. Sure. Your goal in like the next 2 years is don't get fired, bro. So looking at this, Henderson is actually a guy I would have paid up for, and I think they were absolutely prepared to do so. Obviously, you don't get the kid scheduled on a visit without making some pretty serious assurances as to money, and it's pretty well understood in the industry that it's big time money starting early in the kid's career. And I think if he comes in, it would be with the expectation that he is your unquestioned day one starter as a true freshman in this offense, because of the athleticism and what you could do plugging that in. Unfortunately for the Noles, he cancels his visit. He's very tight with Willie Fritz, the Houston head coach. Like that's been a relationship that we've known about for a long time. His coach in high school is somebody who's known Fritz for a long time. He wants to stay close to home with family. Houston does have some like serious mega boosters who, for the most part, focus on pro sports. Like the Houston Rockets owner, for instance, is one of the Houston guys. I don't know if he's the one who's funding Keyshawn's deal, but like they do have the resources to keep somebody at some point. Now, you might say, well, Bud, okay, but Houston lost their entire secondary in the spring portal. Yeah, that's true, but they were going to suck this year anyway. Probably. So maybe, again, like I was talking about 10 minutes ago, this is a situation in which Houston they're trying to go a little more all in 26, 27, and they realize 25 is not a year in which they can truly win. So I would have spent up for Henderson. I don't think I would spend up for the remaining guys. Like Florida State's bringing in O'Neal on a visit. I think Jaden O'Neal is a fine product or fine prospect, right? But I don't think that I just don't think I would personally. I would just go save my money, get a 3-star runner, go spread the money around amongst some more elite defensive linemen that you're having real trouble getting traction with right now and bring those guys in. You're running the Malzahn system. It's a system where the quarterback's legs are arguably more important than the quarterback's arm. Now, you can debate that, but I think the fact that it would be a debate says that it is close, okay? O'Neal he's not a slug, but he's not some like crazy special athlete, all right? I don't think, at least. And I've seen him in person a number of times at a lot of these national camps. He's a good player. I'm going to actually, did he make the Elite 11 finals? Let me look at the roster here. I don't know if he did. I got to start looking at exactly who made it. I've been watching a lot of quarterback film recently. In Malzahn's career, when he has gone after these guys who are like passers, I don't like the results. I don't like Malzahn's stats when his guys have to pass the ball a lot. I don't like this offense at all when it falls out of love with the run. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Be who you were brought in to be, which is run the ball. I think the proper course of action here is not to commit a bunch of money to a quarterback recruit. Instead, commit like a decent chunk of money to a quarterback recruit who is a better runner than he is a thrower. I think that works fine in this offense. I think this is kind of capitalizing on the inefficiency of the market, right? If you are the Boston Red Sox, you don't need an elite defensive playing left fielder because the Green Monster is only 300 feet away. So you can put a guy out there like a Manny Ramirez who really can't move, but he hit the crap out of the ball. There are examples of this, like certain systems. You have to understand what you need and what you don't need. Now, if you're Norvell, I think the counter might be, hey, bud, I'm trying not to get fired. If I land a 4-star quarterback prospect, that allows me to sell hope to boosters. Sure, right? Now, but I don't have to agree with that, and I think Mike is a good coach. I think he's made some missteps, and they also had some bad luck last year. Like, I think it was some of both, to be honest. And I've said that before on this show a number of times. I just don't think I would really spend up on any of the remaining quarterbacks at this point that they're actually in it for who are not named Keyshawn Henderson. Now, maybe, I think you do still need to recruit Henderson because if you look at this, Houston's win total is, where are we at here? All right. So Houston's win total is 5.5, and they're pretty heavily favored to go over 5.5. Part of that, I think, is the non-conference schedule joke, right? Houston Cougars schedule 2025. All right. In looking at this, I mean, they get Rice, they get Colorado, which is very rebuilt. I'm not sure they're any good. We'll see. Oregon State, which is kind of quickly devolving into a G5 roster. Stephen F. Austin, that's an FCS team. Now, they do get Texas Tech. They go to Oklahoma State, which didn't win a game last year in conference. Arizona, which almost the same. At Arizona State, that'll be a tough one. Host West Virginia, that's a rebuilt, WVU team. At UCF, that's a rebuilding UCF team. Hosting TCU, again, not an easy game. And then at Baylor. So I can certainly see them making a bowl. But if for some reason Houston does fall apart, I think you need to stay on Henderson because that is a guy who I think is just totally tailor-made for your offense in a way that, in my opinion, O'Neal is not. So I would not pay up for O'Neal, to be honest. I wouldn't do it. I don't like I remember when Malzahn took Sean White and all the Auburn narrative was, they're really going to showcase the passing stuff. I'm like, these passing concepts suck. Like, what are we doing? Like, no, it's get a running quarterback. Be what you're supposed to be. All right. Next thing here, a lot of people have asked, what about what do you want to take? Which road game would you pick this year? Actually, I thought about this one a lot. Stanford. Stanford is the road game that I would go on for sure. I've heard it's an absolutely beautiful campus. It's really cool area, nice time of year out there with the weather. Tailgating scene kind of a little more laid back, maybe a little more wine and cheese, like literally. But I just think that'd be pretty cool, and to go see like such a nice campus as Stanford. I bet you the fans who do show up are probably pretty passionate about Stanford football. Probably not a lot of bandwagon fans there in Palo Alto. So I'm going to pick Stanford. Maybe we'll bring back some stuff on that as well. Stay tuned for a future episode. All right, and then let's go ahead and talk about ESPN and the FPI, because that's apparently a thing we need to talk about. Let me find what's the website here. All right. Oh, this is like totally jacked now. Where's this at? Oh, season totals. Okay. So for the 2024 season, FPI is ESPN's Football Power Index. It is really pretty good as far as it was 8th out of 55 publicly tested models in terms of absolute error, which is pretty solid. It was, where are we at here? 7th in terms of mean square error. Against the spread, it was 2nd in the country, actually at 52.235. So if you're following that blindly across all games, you're not like going broke. You're not like making real money, but a lot of these models are nowhere close to that. So ESPN FPI is actually something that has improved quite a bit over the past few years. I do prefer SP Plus quite a bit for some reasons that I'm not going to get into, because Bill's my friend and I kind of know what goes into it. And whereas like I know the people who run FPI, but I don't know exactly what goes into it compared to SP Plus. So I do prefer SP Plus. But regardless, if you take a look, FPI performed extremely well last year. I think ESPN has made quite a few improvements to its model. Now, there are some wonky stuff about this. So Florida State is, where are we at? Florida State is 48th in FPI with a power rating of 4.2. So, for instance, Bama is 3rd in the preseason FPI with 24.2. So on a neutral field, they would say it's like a 20 point spread. Game in Tallahassee, obviously, to open the year, 17. So that's a pretty big gap between what FPI thinks, what Vegas thinks. Vegas sitting about 11.5. So 6.5 points off the spread is pretty significant for two Power 5 teams. But it is week 1, and people are able to have their opinions. If you look at this and you just want to go boil it down by which conference, though, I think this is probably where people are more interested. So FPI has Florida State 7th in the conference, and really grouped pretty closely with Boston College and North Carolina, slightly above Duke, which I don't know. I think Duke might be pretty good. I think Duke's a better team than Carolina. I think Duke's a better team than Boston College. We will have to see if I'm right about that. But anyway, that seems like the teams above them. Louisville, yeah, I think Louisville's a better team than FSU is. Georgia Tech, I think as long as Haynes King is healthy, probably so. But maybe not by a ton. We'll have to see. Every year is different. That was a very special Georgia Tech team last year in terms of emotions, how they played, how hard they played, all that kind of stuff. SMU, yeah, I think as long as Kevin Jennings is there, probably so. Clemson, yes, and Miami, although Miami being above Clemson to me is a little bit wild. If you're going to quibble with this, it's by what? Just the Hokies over FSU? Like, I think so. Maybe Georgia Tech, but I don't. Could FSU finish 2nd or 3rd in this league? Certainly. Could they finish 13th or 12th? Yeah, that's also possible. They do have a bit of a difficult schedule. Standings wise, so chance to win the conference, they have FSU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th as far as chance to win the conference, and a 61% chance to make 6 wins. So 6-6 exactly. I projected. Okay, guys, like, sure, this is not that much different than what Vegas has. The model is probably not seeing a full season out of Thomas Castellanos, which maybe the model's smart for that, by the way. I'm not trying to jinx the kid. His track record says that he does not stay healthy. So I think all the 8-4 type projections for the Noles are a very healthy Thomas Castellanos somehow plays 12 games, which I think is not real smart to assume. And the model's probably looking at his career and saying, okay, he averages this, this, and this because he has not stayed healthy or got benched or both in some cases. I do love the fit of Castellanos for this offense, I think, and we'll have to see how it works. So I am excited. Last thing, I want to leave you on a positive note. I am excited to see if Micah Pettis really gets it in gear and is focused and wants to play and play hard and play through nicks and bruises and stuff. Could Malzahn use him like he used Greg Robinson on that 2013 team? Because for like a large stretch of the season, I'll shout out Cole Kubelik for reminding me of this. Robinson, who went like second overall to the Rams, was like the most dominant force in the sport. Like people just were getting washed down by this guy. It was not at all close. Obviously he failed in the NFL and had a bunch of personal problems and stuff. But that's neither here nor there. I just wonder, like, if Pettis really gets it in gear, a guy that big, Malzahn knows what to do with him. So I am curious to see how that plays out. I'm excited for the season. I'm excited to learn a lot about this team. I really hope they stay healthy in fall camp because obviously they didn't get a damn thing. Well, they didn't get much done in spring ball with how many injuries they had. A lot of observing and learning from the sidelines, just given who was and was not there on a daily basis. With that, appreciate it. Of course, patreon.com/Nolecast. Drop your questions in there, and we'll have another show next week. Take care, y'all.